Good morning. Welcome to an introduction to Health at Every Size. My name is Sydney Bell. I'm a counselor, social worker based out of Kitchener-Waterloo in Ontario. And I'm really delighted to be here with you this morning to just do a quick overview of Health at Every Size, sort of an introductory little talk about what it is and why it might be sort of an approach to health that you might consider embracing. Again, just to give you a sense of who I am, I am based in Kitchener, Ontario, as I mentioned earlier, and I do a lot of body image coaching with women and men and all kinds of groups. I'm also, I consider myself a Health at Every Size educator. I've been aware of and practicing Health at Every Size for many years. Like many people, I was actually introduced to this framework by coming across a book called Health at Every Size by Linda Bacon, who is quite a well-known researcher and spokesperson on the topic of health at every size. I've participated in facilitator training with Linda Bacon a few years ago, and that really strengthened my appreciation and commitment to this framework, this way of approaching health and weight. And I just love taking any opportunity that I can to talk about health at every size, because I think it's just a really positive way of relating with the body and working towards health and wellness. Let's see, what else did I want to say? I think that's about it in terms of myself. Again, welcome to this webinar. Hopefully you can see on the window there's a few options for communication. There is a chat function, so hopefully you can find that, and feel free to post any comments or questions you might have as we go along. I will do my best to take note of any questions that come up and answer them to the best of my ability. I will be posting my contact information at the end, and following up this webinar with an email to all who have registered with some lists of resources and ways to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. So I think that's all the introductory commentary I wanted to make. I'm going to bring up a slide here just to go over with you what it is that I'm going to talk about today in our time together. So during this webinar, I will take a bit of time at the beginning to go over some assumptions about weight and health that we currently sort of sit with in our society and in our relationship with weight and health. So we'll look at some of those assumptions, and we'll also consider the effectiveness of a focus on weight, which seems to be very common right now when we think about our health and well-being. Often one of the first things on people's minds is that we need to focus on our weight. So we'll consider the effectiveness of that. And then hopefully for the bulk of our time together this morning, we will have a chance to, well, we will indeed have a chance to learn about and talk about the Health at Every Size framework. So that is the plan for our time together today. I'm thinking we will be half an hour to about 45 minutes, so it's not going to be a hugely long session. So hopefully that'll help you get back into the rest of your relaxing Sunday. And also, this webinar is being recorded. So if you miss any of it or have to duck out early or have not been able to join us, you'll have a chance to listen through and catch up at a time that works for you. So I'm going to move on here to just another slide, talking about some of those assumptions I was mentioning earlier that we currently kind of sit in when we think about weight and health. So here we go. Here are some of the assumptions I was talking about. The first one is that there's a real core accepted belief that fatter people or people who live in larger bodies are at a higher risk of death and illness. We've really come to really associate larger bodies with ill health, and that has become a really strongly ingrained assumption that really impacts our choices and how we relate to ourselves and our bodies. Another assumption that really underpins how we take care of ourselves generally is that losing weight is the only way for fat people or people who are in larger bodies that they have to improve their health and well-being and to possibly prolong their life. Thirdly, another assumption that we have, which I think is often quite unhelpful, is that this idea that then pursuing weight loss, like intentionally making choices in our physical activities or our the food that we eat, is a good idea, and that we also then labor under the assumption that weight loss is achievable by everyone, and all you need is the right plan and willpower. So those are some of the assumptions that really underpin our current way of thinking about weight and health, and really shape the way that we interact with our body, and really have an impact on the choices that we make for self-care and well-being. So that often, those assumptions really kind of set us up to being a culture of dieting and really, wanting to pursue weight loss in an intentional way. And really, they feed into a lot of different motivations. There's lots of different reasons why people might choose to try to lose weight intentionally, and often those are grounded in feelings around our appearance. We want to maybe make a shift in how we look. Many people are motivated by the desire to feel better in their day-to-day lives, to have more energy, to feel healthier. I also think there's reasons around bonding and connecting with people. Often I think people engage in diets to feel included. I know in many workplaces and in many families, diet talk is really pervasive, and talking about the new exciting plan that we're going to engage in, or our hopes for weight loss, are often a way that we find to bond with one another. So I think that could really might impact our choices to try dieting and to pursue weight loss. Another important consideration, I think many people pursue dieting or intentional weight loss as a way to have some control over our lives. For many of us, life is rather chaotic, and we have all kinds of challenges, whether it's in our family or in our workplace, our relationships, our feelings of self-esteem, challenges we might have there. I think for many people, the thought of a diet or a plan and weight loss is an opportunity to possibly feel in control and feel like, oh, if I could just do this one thing, everything else in my life will fall into place, or at least I will feel good about accomplishing this. So there's the reasons that we might engage in weight loss are many, and they are certainly impacted by the assumptions that I went through earlier, that we have this assumption that's so solid that it starts to sound like common sense, that larger bodies are inherently not as healthy. But unfortunately, these assumptions and this desire to diet to lose weight is actually can cause us problems and challenges with our health. And I'm just going to share with you now a slide that goes over some of the dangers of dieting and choosing to pursue intentional weight loss. And I think many of us who have dieted are aware or have experienced this first concept of weight cycling, where we go on a diet, we have some success, we feel good, and then for whatever reason, we're not able to sustain it, and our weight goes up. So it just sort of lends itself to a bit of a cycle of our weight going up and down, which is actually very, very hard on our body, and really hard on our heart and hard on our body systems. There's lots of science out there that suggests that perhaps weight cycling is just as, or even more so, a challenge for our health and well-being than perhaps living in a larger body. Other suggested dangers of dieting or intentional weight loss include an increased risk for osteoporosis. There's chronic psychological stress, which has an impact on our health and our well-being. It contributes to increased anxiety about weight and body size. And unfortunately, dieting is also puts us at risk for eating disordered behavior. It can also cause our bodies to gain weight and to maybe end up being at higher than whatever our natural weight might be. And it also contributes to the sort of societal notion that we have that fat bodies or larger bodies are inherently bad or unhealthy, which I think contributes to ill health and well-being. So those are some of the noted dangers of dieting and sort of that diet mentality, which I'll go over a little bit in a moment. So I think when it comes to health and weight, what those of us who really embrace a health at every size framework, what we're encouraging is some critical thinking and checking into some of those assumptions that I went through earlier. Just those assumptions that a larger body is inherently more healthy. And one of the ways that we can do that is to really be aware of the messages that we're hearing telling us that larger size bodies or fatter bodies are inherently unhealthy, and maybe looking a little deeper. People who have really taken a critical look at health and weight science have actually found that many of the studies that are telling us that fatter bodies are so unhealthy and doing us harm often don't control for factors like physical activity or nutrition when they're looking at the linkages between body size and health outcomes. So it's really important to ask that what happens when you maybe do bring in those factors into studies. And what people are finding who are doing this critical thinking is that when factors like physical activity, for instance, are brought into studies that are linking health and weight, they're seeing that actually the direct linkage between larger bodies and ill health is really diminished. And just acknowledging realities that active people who happen to be in a larger body are actually experiencing just as good a health as thinner people who are active, right? That perhaps it's body size isn't the helpful factor to be considering when we're looking at what's best for our health, and maybe it's other things like physical activity or perhaps nutrition. So really, what it's coming down to is this idea that weight is not a reliable predictor of health. Right. So if that's a possibility, or if that's really kind of showing itself to be true, then how helpful is this focus on the need to change your body size in order to improve your health? And I think also the notion that diets can be harmful, as I kind of went through those lists of the dangers of dieting with you, um, it really makes us want to stop and think, and is there a different way that maybe we can be looking at weight and health that can be more supportive? So if we're recognizing that perhaps maybe there is an opportunity to look critically at our currently held assumptions about weight and health, and we're acknowledging that perhaps um, there's some actual dangers associated with intentional weight loss and dieting, it does encourage us to ask the question a little bit about what is a diet, which is, I will acknowledge, somewhat murky waters, but I will encourage you to really just consider this a little bit. I mean, there are um, so many things that influence our choices around food. You know, not just including perhaps a desire to lose weight, but we're influenced by our family, by our culture, we're influenced by our values. So we may choose to embrace a vegetarian diet for humane reasons. We may, be really drawn to this notion of clean eating, or, eating less processed foods, or we might have health issues such as gluten intolerances, which may result in us choosing to eat in a way that's considered gluten-free. So there's lots of different things that shape why we might choose to eat the foods that we want to eat. And if we are concerned and want to avoid the dangers of dieting, and we ask ourselves, well, is this a diet, these choices that I'm making? I think a very simple way to consider that and assess that is to ask yourself if the motivation or goal for the choices that you're making include a specified weight loss, because then I think sort of no matter what your other motivations might be, you are in danger of, yes, in fact, being on a diet and putting yourself at risk for some of those dangers that we talked about earlier. So the unfortunate thing about dieting as well is that it's very insidious, and it has in fact shaped our way of relating to food so much that there's this phenomenon known as a diet mentality. So even when we're perhaps not on a specific food plan, like we're maybe, we're not doing paleo or doing the 30-day cabbage diet, we may be just wanting to make choices that generally improve our health, which is great. But we have to be careful of that diet mentality coming in, and maybe just sort of warping those health and well-being choices that we might be making, and bringing in that sort of unhealthy aspect of our approach to food that's really impacted by a desire to specifically lose weight. And some of the indicators that you might be kind of working under or being influenced by a diet mentality include a notion of moralizing food, where you're tempted to sort of group foods into, this is good food and this is bad food, which really is a bit of a risk for that, again, that the dangers of dieting, when we set up certain foods to be good and other foods to be bad. Instead, maybe looking to recognize that perhaps some foods are more health supporting than others, but ideally going for an approach that offers a space for all foods in our diets. Also, when what we eat is really tied into our self-worth. So when we've determined that certain foods are good and other foods are bad, and we decide our own self-worth is determined by our ability to only eat good foods or not eat bad foods, that's kind of an indication of that diet mentality. Another indication of a diet mentality is just being sort of constantly thinking about what foods you might or might not eat, and just it sort of takes over your life in a way. I mean, certainly we do want to be thoughtful about the foods that we eat and make every attempt that we can to be supporting our health and well-being with our food choices, but really, it shouldn't have to take over our entire lives and sort of consume all of our energy and our brain space. So that might be another indication that there might be some work you might want to do. When we're in the diet mentality, we might be tempted to just cut out entire food categories. That might be influenced by a desire to eat for weight loss. I might choose to, I'm not eating dairy, full stop, or cutting out carbs. Might be an indication of that diet mentality. It's really when you're really eating in ways that's really sort of rigid and according to rules that that can't be broken. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. So those are just some little indications of this diet mentality that can actually be really unhelpful in terms of our relationship with food and our body. So all of that to kind of set the stage of where many of us currently are. This is our sort of our current relationship, our current ideas about weight and health, which shapes our relationship with food on a societal level. That's really can be really hard to navigate. So this brings me to the topic of the webinar this morning, and hopefully an alternative approach that you might find to be helpful in shifting away from some of these harmful ways of relating with food, and that is this framework of health at every size. Which is really a weight-neutral approach to health and well-being. And it's all about encouraging healthy habits and attitudes but shifting the focus off weight as the be-all and end-all indicator of how we are doing. So it's all about supporting you to feel good about yourself, no matter what your body size happens to be. So let me show you some of the elements of health at every size. Maybe that'll give you a better idea of what I'm talking about here. Let me just get my technology working. Okay, so when we're talking about health at every size, what we're talking about is looking for opportunities, or really looking to embrace a relationship with food that allows us to eat in a flexible, sort of low stress manner. That's one element. A second element is around movement, and looking to it, once again, find joy in moving our body, moving away from thinking of movement and activity as a chore, or even, sadly, many people see it as a punishment for foods they might have eaten. So again, shifting to a more joyful way of moving in and connecting with your body. Finally, another important element of health at every size is a notion of accepting and respecting the natural diversity of body sizes and shapes. Unfortunately, we live in a society right now that currently embraces a thin ideal in terms of both beauty and health. And this has become so ingrained that we've begun to think that perhaps thinness is sort of the natural state of being that we all should be at. And if we're not currently living in a thinner body, then there's something wrong with us, that we tend to pathologize that. Under the health at every size approach, we remember that body diversity is normal, and that throughout history, human beings have always come in a variety of shapes and sizes, ranging from very thin to very fat, and with most of us falling somewhere in the middle. Right, so that's a really important element of health at every size, is again remembering that we all come in various body shapes and sizes. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea and an introduction into what we're talking about when we talk about health at every size. What can be really helpful when we're first learning about health at every size is to address some of the kind of myths that are out there. I know that when I start talking about this idea of a weight neutral approach to health, and shifting away from perhaps relating to food mostly through dieting or deprivation, or feeling badly about the foods that we eat, people get a little concerned. It's often a bit of a shift for people, and so as a result of that, there are these sort of myths that have been generated out there that I find it helpful to actually just sort of look at and try to unpack, so that people can understand when we talk about health at every size, where we're coming from. To show you a slide that talks about one of these myths here. Okay, let me just bring it up. So the first myth around the health at every size approach is that when we talk about health at every size, we're saying that everybody is healthy regardless of whatever weight they happen to be at. And that's really not what we're saying. That's not what the health at every size message is all about. In reality, it's true, not everybody may not be at the weight that is right for them, or as I like to think of it, their natural weight. Some people might be under that for a variety of reasons. Perhaps it's health concerns, or challenges in their relationship with food, or perhaps they might be over what their natural weight might be. And again, for a variety of reasons. But what's really sort of critical here is that what we're recognizing is that efforts to intentionally lose that weight is often futile and even harmful. So shifting instead to looking towards encouraging people to make the healthiest choices they can when it comes to food and movement is recognizes that you can, support good health regardless of your size through those choices. So that's the first myth that often causes concern for people when they're thinking about the health at every size framework, and considering if it's a helpful framework for them. The second myth that often rears its head when we start talking about health at every size is it's a myth that when we talk about health at every size, that we're saying that, people don't need to be concerned about nutrition or activity level, that we're health at every size is just giving people carte blanche to lay on the couch and eat ice cream and potato chips. And that's actually not the case at all. A health at every size framework recognizes that eating nutritious foods and moving your body and taking care of your body by through movement are important components of health. However, weight in and of itself is not. Um, we're also saying that when you eat based on internal cues, so what I mean by that is it's when we are eating again um, as a result of feelings of hunger or recognizing our feelings of fullness. And you start to recognize that certain foods make you feel good and others don't. And also within this health at every size framework, dietary variety is encouraged. Again, it's that moving away from perhaps not just sort of writing off total groups of foods or again moralizing food, seeing some food as good and some food as bad, and instead embracing sort of a more holistic approach to the food that we're eating. So that's the second myth that often comes up when people are talking about the health at every size framework. And I've got one more here that I'll just share with you. One final little myth about health at every size. So this is the idea, and it really does roll out of the previous myth that we were talking about, but we have this idea that if we based what we ate on our body cues or responding to cravings, that all we would do is eat junk food all the time. And this, of course, is a fear that many people hold. And it's a fear that keeps us attached to, instead of following our own body cues, we rely on other experts and diet gurus to tell us what we should or should not be eating. And it's a really important myth to explore, because really what's happening and what we found is that it's not so much permission to eat based on your body cues that often leads to binging or perhaps a more unhealthful behavior. But actually, for many people, it's the anticipation of our impending diets. And or when we are on a diet, guilt from falling off the wagon or cheating, that can be a bigger trigger for feelings of being out of control around food and perhaps binging behaviors. It sort of really ties back into that weight cycling phenomena that I touched on earlier when we were talking about dieting. And the truth of it is that really humans crave variety in our food. And, we really do have the ability to, when we stop again and listen to our bodies and regain that ability that we all definitely displayed as babies and toddlers of knowing, when we wanted to eat and when we didn't want to eat anymore. And, really, trusting our bodies to take us to the foods that will best support our health and well-being. It's amazing the shifts that can happen when we look to regain our body wisdom and make our health and well-being choices sort of based on that. So that sort of is the three myths that I wanted to go through with you. And as we're sort of getting ready to wrap up here a little bit, I just wanted to highlight that shifting to a weight neutral approach for many people, it really fosters a space for sustainability when it comes to bringing habits that we want to employ for our health and well-being. An example that I like to give in my own personal experience is that quite a few summers I've taken on running or jogging, which isn't something I had done in my life until I was into my late 30s or early 40s, and I've done quite a few 0 to K running programs, and um, for me, I was able to actually take that on and embrace that, and enjoy the benefits of feeling good, the de-stressing that cardio exercise tends to provide, that endorphin rush. Um, because I had been able to do some work over the past few years, and sort of letting go those expectations of weight loss. And if I hadn't done that, I would have given up probably, you know, uh, not long after I had begun these different running programs, because while I certainly enjoyed, like I said, the benefits of improved cardiovascular fitness and uh, definitely positive impacts on my mental health and well-being. These exercise programs have not necessarily significantly impacted my weight or my body size. So what would have been unfortunate is if I had been really sort of focused on creating a downward shift in my body size, is that I would have given up on these programs that I've embarked on, and not had been able to experience those other benefits of improved well-being, and all those wonderful benefits of exercise. So it really, that sort of really shaped my thinking around weight and health, and why I really resonate with these elements of health at every size, and that idea of shifting to a weight neutral approach to health and well-being. So I hope that has sparked your thinking a little bit. I just have one more slide to go through here with you, just to kind of give you an idea of what living health at every size is all about, kind of as a summary of what we talked about today. So if you're interested in this framework, and thinking about embracing a living health at every size approach in how you approach your health and wellness, these are some things to think about. Making peace with food, really considering getting off the diet roller coaster, looking to perhaps address any emotional eating that you might do, and getting back to a place where food isn't stressful. So that can be definitely a significant piece for a lot of folks, but it's really supported by this weight neutral approach to weight and health, I believe. It's also supported by making sure you're eating foods you enjoy, touch with your hunger and fullness cues, and finding movement and physical activity that is fun. And again, that work around embracing body diversity, which can be, again, I recognize a challenge, considering our societal thin ideal that's out there. But there are resources and really wonderful examples out there of folks who are doing that work, that can be inspiring for sure. So looking to embrace your body at every size. I mean, really it comes down to when we're talking about health and wellness, we're more inclined to take care of something that we love and embrace. And if we come to our relationship with our bodies, really coming from a place of loathing and needing to change to feel acceptable, really doesn't sustain long-term healthcare habits and wellness habits. However, I have found in my own journey and working with clients that when you make that shift to respect and embrace your body, no matter its size or shape, and perhaps even learning to love and enjoy, really having a sustained wellness plan it just feels it's much easier, it's more natural, it flows, and it's sustainable. So there, I think that's sort of everything I was wanting to chat about today in this introductory session to health at every size. I want to thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you found this to be an informative session and hopefully inspiring. And I just want to let you know that I will be following up this webinar with an email to all of you who have registered, and I'll be sure to provide my contact information, my website and email address, and also a way to sign up for my Living Body Sovereign newsletter, which I send out about once a month. You're very welcome to join that if you want to have, I send out tips and articles and information about classes and other events that I'm hosting in that. I'll also send out a couple of Health at Every Size resources, a couple of books, and just one or two informational videos that you might find helpful if you're excited to learn more about Health at Every Size. So I think that's our time this morning. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And again, I invite you to contact me if you have any questions or concerns or would like any more information. Okay. Have a good day.